you do interviews with people, write features and things like that. So it's not just reviews.
And podcasts.
Oh, yes, and do podcasts.
Could you still smoke on the plane?
Yes, but I didn't smoke.
No,
but
that's
yes,
fine.
it was still during the audition in Basel, I broke my ankle. So it's got a choir in it. And
So we need a big company and a choir now.
yes.
Deborah, I think you're going to be very expensive for a programming team. The first dog person. We've had a lot of cats.
He is the main man in my
He's
house.
the main man in your life.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What's his name?
Bruce.
Welcome back to the Ballet Nights Podcast, the podcast where we bring you closer to the artist and tell you their story in their own words. My name is Jamiel Devernay-Laurence and I am your host, and today's guest is a former dancer in Munich, a dancer of London Festival Ballet that became English National Ballet, and today a writer and critic. Welcome to the show, Deborah Weiss.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on today. Is this a normal thing for you?
Absolutely not.
I remember when I asked you and you were like, what is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, normally I'm asking the questions, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Well, I think, to be honest, when I landed in London last year with this Ballet Nights thing, people who are here in London and on the scene see you a certain way. I was obviously excited to learn about your work as a writer and a critic, but everyone would always mention that you were a dancer and then not really tell me any more than that. So talking with those in the know, I thought was a really important story to be telling. I also thought it'd be great for people to be able to see you as well on top of that. And for once, rather than you writing about dance, we'll be talking about you. This could go either way, I can feel. But yeah, no, it's definitely an exciting story. So you're at the Royal Ballet School for 7 years. What happened next?
Actually, I decided not to join the Royal Ballet. Not that I was offered a contract, but they did say I would be the next one to get in. I would have had to have done another year, and I felt ready to go and try and dance. So I tried 2 places, 1.5 places actually. I went to Basel and auditioned, and I had an audition with Stuttgart the next day. Very excited about it because I'd always loved Stuttgart so much. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, during the audition in Basel, I broke my ankle. So...
And Basel, Switzerland.
Yes.
So was the company touring there, I guess, or?
No. There is a big company there, and it used to be very classical. So I went and watched class in Stuttgart with my crutches the next day, and then I came home, and then I had to recover for a little while. And then I did an open audition with London Festival Ballet, and they had 1 contract, and I got it. And then that was it. Onwards and upwards.
Well, it's quite an interesting moment then. I guess you'd made quite a big decision that you weren't going to do that 3rd year, and I guess shortly after you ended up breaking your foot. Did your recovery happen by going back to the school, or were you just out there in the wild?
No. I was out there doing open classes and crossing my fingers. I mean, I wasn't injured for that long. I think of myself as a fast healer.
Well, I mean, you broke your foot, so...
I know, but it did have to heal, you know. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I don't think I'd been back very long. When I did the audition, I didn't expect to get into Festival Ballet. I mean, it was a company that I'd watched my whole life. And but I got lucky and got in. And it was during the time when Beryl Gray was directing.
Amazing.
It was an amazing time. When I look back, I think there were so many incredible dancers in the company, and the repertoire was phenomenal. So, yes, and they were doing new ballets as well. We, very quickly after I joined, we acquired Peter Schauffer's La Sylphide, and that was really the moment where I sort of got a good start, because he thought that I was right for the main part.
So London Festival Ballet was obviously a big player in UK dance. It became English National Ballet. At the time you became a part of the company, how long had the company been around? What was the reputation and the feeling of it at the time?
So I joined at the end of 1978, and the company started towards the end of 1949. 50, it was really established then.
Right.
And it was very much a touring company. We did do London seasons, obviously, but we would do at least 8 or 10 weeks on the road in the autumn.
And that touring, I guess, is that touring around the UK, or was that including international landings?
There were, in 1979, sorry, I've got a thing about dates, we went on tour to China.
Wow, okay.
And it was sort of just after the Cultural Revolution. I hadn't even been in the company a year. And we went to what was then Peking, of course it's Beijing now, and Shanghai, and we performed Giselle, Mary Skeeping Giselle, which is still in the repertoire.
75 years of EMB celebrating it this year, as we speak.
Yes. And we did a triple bill with Glenn Tetley's Greening, Etude, and Ronnie Hines' The Sanguine Fern.
So you took out some really hard things to dance. You did that flight, which I imagine at the time in the 70s, early 80s was different to how it is now. It wasn't an Emirates A380.
I don't know much about planes, but no, I'm sure it wasn't.
Could you still smoke on the plane?
Yes, but I didn't smoke.
No,
but
that's
yes,
fine.
it was still, yeah, one of my colleagues actually said that people used to smoke and they used to get into their pajamas for these long tours, if it was Australia or something like that.
Yeah.
On the plane was hired out for the company only.
Wow.
They'd get into their pajamas and smoke and drink for the entire 40-hour trek.
40 hours. I mean, that's really interesting. So it's another thing to tour in that era. And I guess when you landed in China, you know, a lot of people thinking about Shanghai now think of that really cool triple tower thing with the bit on the top. And I guess back then there was obviously none of that. So no, I can tell from your face it was different.
It was very, very different. And I think we all thought we were going to get lots of nice Chinese food, as you do here in the takeaways. And
well, big secret, it's not Chinese food you're getting at the takeaway. Yeah, is it really?
No. And I can remember the one thing that we could get was Maltesers, and I got a lot. I lived on Maltesers while we were there.
I mean, we can't show this on the podcast, but actually over there on our snack table, we've got the Maltesers.
I know, it's very triggering.
It was a sign. It was a sign. So, okay, so you came back from China and you were with London Festival Ballet. How did Munich get involved? How did that happen?
Well, I stayed with Festival Ballet for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And then Ronnie Hind had one of my favourite dance people in the world. He was then directing in Munich. And so I thought I'd go and audition for him. And he took me on. And I stayed there 3 years. So Festival was the first job, and then Munich was the second. And unfortunately, I got very injured when I was there. So after 3 years, I decided I was going to stop.
Right. Had you done something kind of catastrophic, or was it an ongoing pain?
I had 3 knee operations.
Oh, just 3? My goodness.
Well, yes, and I just wasn't fully recovered. And I kept, in a typical dancer way, I thought, I really want to get back on stage. I'd always go back a little bit too soon. And then the tendon would sort of rupture again, and so on and so forth. So I came home. I was absolutely distraught at the time, because I was only 28. Mm-hmm. Or was I 27? Maybe, no, 28, I think. And I went to see the Dancers Resettlement Fund, and they put me on a secretarial course. I just thought, I'm going to have to give up. And I also did a freelance journalism course from the London School of Journalism that was just a correspondence course. I didn't actually attend the college.
So writing became the sort of almost immediate next step, at least the thing that led to it, I guess?
It was the thing, I guess. I'll be completely honest here. I had one of those tests where your sort of aptitude test, and they were really horrified at how bad my maths was. And they said...
Were you not doing back-to-back maths classes at the Royal Ballet School? I thought that's what... Is that not the...
No, I mean, it was very different then. You actually didn't do subjects for what was then O-levels if you weren't particularly good at them. There was a choice. So rather than take the O-level in maths, I did geography because I really was absolutely dire at maths.
Right. So they just give up on you. They were like, you don't have to do that
then. I mean, now they would never do that. I mean, you have to do maths and
I think there's some minimum requirements of schooling now. Maybe, I don't know. It's a different time.
Yes. I mean, well, this was the early 70s.
I mean, a lot of my reactions, I have to say, I think I've said out loud, wow, at least 3 times. Because the thing is not only that these things happened, but also that they were probably the first time. So I imagine, was that the first time London Festival Ballet had been to China, for example?
Yes, it was.
So it must have been... Did you know at the time that what you were doing was pioneering, or later looking back, do you kind of say...
Yeah, later.
Really right.
Later, definitely. But Beryl Gray had danced in China, and I think that's why we got invited. Plus, we had a roster of incredible dancers like Peter Schaufers, Evdokimova, Elisabetta Terabust, Patrice Bart, and so on and so forth. And they just wanted the stars, I think.
Amazing. I mean, what were the I mean, the questions I really wanted to ask was how that led into kind of the English National Ballet. So at the time you were there, it wasn't called English National Ballet at all?
No, it was about 2 years after I left, I think.
Right. But you obviously were part of what built it into that.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's the same company, essentially. Yes, well, it was Schaufers that he took over. He was director for my last year there, and he was the one that changed the name. And yeah, I don't quite know why, because Festival Ballet had been around a long time, and it was well known and well loved. But I mean, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that, so Peter, I came across Peter when he was much older, obviously, when towards the end of me dancing, actually, and I met him through his son, Luke. So Luke was dancing with us in Scottish Ballet, and Peter was building a brand new theatre in a church in an enormous space, and I think he's always looking to evolve and look at the next thing, and perhaps that national company status. I mean, obviously funding systems changed. I mean, at the time when it was London Festival Ballet, were you exposed to a lot of donors, for instance? What was the sort of...
Well, no. I think it was much more to do with Arts Council funding, and I mean, I don't even know what the union situation is there now, whether the equity still runs the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very basic, and to be honest, I think we weren't very well paid at all.
Sure.
But the reputation was so strong, and so people did want to come and work with us. I think that was the thing, and one thing led to another. So when Schaufers did his Sylphide, that was a huge success, and then we had quite a few Tetley ballets in the repertoire, and then we had, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, all the old ballets that really don't seem to be done very much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things you've said there that kind of bring us to those old ballets. So you mentioned pay, which has come up on other podcasts as well. And, obviously they're really well-paid dancers now, but there's also dancers who are maybe perhaps not so well-paid. And you talked about also how much the dancers were loved and known, but often those things don't necessarily align. So, with Ballet Nights, which is powered by Fundamentally Dance, which is the overall kind of production company, by creating more dance, more opportunities, more things for people to see, the hope is that we can start to move towards that Premier League football model, that Formula One model, where thousands and thousands of people feel connected to what's happening. Only in that scenario does the ticket price, the subscription perhaps, who knows, that starts to evolve to a place where you can pay what dancers are worth. I mean, football, for example, this much goes in and then this much comes out the other side. even in the elite dance level, this much goes in, as we all know, but still actually relative to the amount of exposure, the amount of work. I mean, you're using your body as your tool, and you suffer for that fact, as you've mentioned yourself. And I have plenty of aches and pains that sometimes crop up. I guess our overall theory is that more dance and the celebration of dance to more people will begin to fix that, actually, and create a scenario where you're not only going to the theatre once, but you're going again and again, and maybe you want a t-shirt, maybe you want to get your picture with the artist, maybe particular artists then receive sort of these, a bit, not celebrity, but they get celebrated, essentially. So it's really interesting what you're saying about the pay, which leads me to, during this difficult time where perhaps the pay wasn't where it needed to be, the creative things happening were off the charts, and a lot of those things aren't seen today. What were the big hitters for you?
Well, can I just go back to the pay thing?
Sure.
I think dancers are brought up. We're almost indoctrinated to think that we're very, very lucky, and I agree with this, to do what we have chosen to do. And actually, if you're not paid very much, it's kind of irrelevant, because you love what you're doing so much and you want it so badly and so passionately that, if somebody says you're only going to get £34.50 a week, if it means you're going to be on stage for 8 shows a week, you just make it work. But anyway, your next question was about...
Well, it's interesting. Again, you take my breath away where you talk about the passion and drive, because I know what that means. And, there would have been a time, especially, I think when you're freshly graduated, where you're most vulnerable, if this wouldn't happen, but if someone was like, we'll give you the Opera House stage and you'll be at the front, but no one will pay you, you do say yes. I mean, you've not put all this into your body to let money be the thing that holds you back. But that being said, what happens later down the line, especially for creative people that go on to choreograph, is how do we raise that money? How do we create platforms and more platforms like this that, not only create wonderful things, but everybody can afford to eat, perhaps that night, perhaps beyond that, and then come back and do it all again. So it's an exciting subject, and I think that where you offer so much value in the many conversations we've now had is you talk about this repertoire that really moved the dial. It might not have achieved higher pay rates, but it certainly achieved funding. What were these big, heavy hitter pieces that we don't get to see anymore?
Well, I would say it was some of the really old Ballet Russe pieces, like Prince Igor, Scheherazade, Petrushka, Spectre de la Rose. All those ballets, they were so much fun to dance. Partly because musically they were very rousing pieces, and partly you were sort of doing something which was far removed from swans and things like that, and yet it was very old and considered to be very classical, and we had wonderful people coaching us. I mean, we had Dame Alicia Markova doing Les Sylphides. She used to come in and rehearse us. Nicholas Beryozov used to do Scheherazade and Prince Igor, and then he also did Petrushka, and he would do the wizard. Is it called the wizard? The guy who oversees the whole thing. He would actually play that part. Mm-hmm. And these were people. Even I would say, when I was there, we were doing Nureev's Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, fantastic.
And his Sleeping Beauty, which was very, very tough. And he would be there rehearsing it. Mm-hmm. And Mary Skeeping as well was still alive, rehearsing Giselle.
I mean, just so a lot of these ballets, not all of them are on camera. No. And actually the role of repetiteur, as we know it, I would say actually not repetiteur, but notators. That's actually moving into obscurity, because obviously modern technology, we can watch it on a video. There are some of these works that are on video that are hard to find. I know a lot of the Peter Darrell back catalogue. The Darrell Trust have been really kind and supplied some videos of, like, for instance, Peter's Cinderella. which I'd never seen before. I didn't know there was a Peter Darrell Cinderella actually until the Trust kind of explained it to me. And these were great works at the time, and actually I think there's a misconception that the further back you go, technique wasn't important. But I was seeing a lot of these dancers do things, and I was like, oh my God, maybe we've gone backwards in some areas. So we are very interested at Ballet Nights in bringing these pieces back. Like, if you had to choose one, what do you think would be a good first step for us to get on stage? Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying the Ballet Nights podcast. For tickets to our live shows, seasonal offers and discounts, and to read our exclusive blog releases, you can sign up to the mailing list at balletnights.com. And if you'd like to support the channel, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon for notifications. And now, back to the pod.
Well, the problem is with some of them is that you do need a big cast.
Sure.
From the point of view of dancing it, and I was only in the corps de ballet, and so, it wasn't as if it was some massive opportunity that I had. I was always in the back row. But I loved doing Prince Igor, and it was mainly the music. And also, the lead role in that for a man is really exciting. You have to be able to turn, you have to be able to jump, and it's very powerful and all the rest of it. Now, whether or not it's politically correct these days, I mean, that is part of the problem.
So like challenging maybe some archaic ideas and things like this.
And for instance, in Petrushka, there's the part of the Moor.
Right.
And I mean, you can't put those things on stage in that way.
Well, culturally, I guess we've evolved to a place where some of those things are unacceptable. But having said that, a lot of great work happens in trying to modernize those things. Maybe we shouldn't say goodbye to those versions completely. How can we make changes there? How can we, with the endorsement of all those that were perhaps there or feel connected to the story? So I think the question was, what is the one you choose?
Yes.
It seems quite hard to choose, but what would be the one you'd bring back for a Ballet Nights?
I think Prince Igor.
Prince Igor.
Only just because I think the audience, they thoroughly enjoy it too. It's got a choir in it, and it's fantastic.
So we need a big company and a choir now.
Yes.
Deborah, I think you're going to be very expensive for a programming team, but I'm sure we'll find a way.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, you touched on something really interesting, which is music, good music. And actually this might lead into kind of both you as a dancer, but then I guess as a critic as well. I've been to some programs recently where the music isn't received well, or it's soundscape, or it's very difficult. It's hard outside of a major ballet company to see like greatest hits, for example. I was really excited about a piece from Ballet X I recently got to see, Big Ones, which features the music of Amy Winehouse. Public that are perhaps not as familiar with dance or want to try it out for the first time, having something like that, having a hook like that, a bit like we saw with Black Sabbath, can be a great way to bring them in. However, there is a massive overhead on music licensing. I mean, the music industry through record labels and publishers, it's very difficult to navigate. And we do have a connection to Erased Tape Records, but it's proving quite difficult to solve. Even now with Ballet Nights having more support for works, having more budget, we wouldn't be able to just pick anything off the shelf for a new creation.
Right. Well, I mean, I understand that, but from my point of view, the only reason I think I ever started to dance was because of the music. And even now, if the music does not appeal, and I've got a very sort of broad, I like lots and lots of different types of music, but if the dance does not express the music, I find it very difficult to sit through it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm agreeing with you totally. And I think that the Diaghilev-esque approach of moving outside of, prioritizing the ballet or the dance above everything else, or rather the opposite of that is the Diaghilev-esque approach. There's a whole movement of young musicians right now where they will be given licensing and they will be given rights because those composers, very successful composers like Olafur Arnalds, for example, they want that next generation to play their music and they want it to be seen on, ironically, not on smaller stages. They want it seen on bigger stages as opportunities for those musicians. And one of the unlikely outcomes of Ballet Nights has been connecting with young musicians now at Trinity College of Music, or it's Trinity Laban now rather, and Royal College of Music as well, and meeting I should mention Guildhall too, because they're also very helpful. But yeah, meeting these young musicians that are actually in a very similar place to the dance artists, especially when it's emerging or new voices, and unlocking, I happen to have a connection to, and then megastar composer, basically. But it is a challenge. Most creatives don't know about the licensing, and they'll come to me and they'll say, I've chosen the complete back catalogue of Max Richter and it's all going to be remixed and we're also playing it backwards. And then I say, I'm going to have to write to at least 3 different publishers and get permission, and then it becomes kind of impossible. So I think it's a challenge that isn't solved yet.
Well, I agree, and I'm sure it's the same even on the big stage. It's very, very difficult, but it's still one of the most important elements in many people's lives. Non-dancers and God knows what else. You can't have a life without music.
Collaboration is key then, I guess. The way to solve it for those out there that are young creatives listening to all this great work that happened and is no longer here, the way to initiate more of that will be to, maybe go musician first, maybe find the people that can access this work, or in a really cool scenario, maybe making it too.
Yes.
Which gets us on to, speaking of cool work, you get to see a lot of stuff.
I do now.
You've just come back from Riga in Latvia, if I'm correct. Am I correct?
Yes.
What were you seeing out there?
I was seeing Kenneth Tyndall's Casanova.
Excellent.
With the Latvian National Ballet. I was actually reviewing it for Bachtrack, which is where I work now. Exclusively
with Bachtrack or other publications?
I do now. I don't really have time to do anything else, but I'm very happy about it, I have to say. But I mean, it's been quite a journey getting there. Mm-hmm. So just to go back a little bit, in my 20s, I had 3 years off, and then I decided, I had a back operation, had a disc removed in my back, and then I felt so much better afterwards. I thought, I'm going to go back and dance. Crazy. So I did another 3 years in smaller companies, just to get it out of my system. And I was living in Germany for a year with my then partner, and I was trying to get a normal job because I stopped dancing, and I tried everything. I tried to get an ironing job, a cleaning job, working in Aldi, whatever, and I just couldn't get a job. So I decided to send a review of something I'd seen back to the Dancing Times.
Oh, you took the initiative and just said, I'm doing this and see what happens.
I just thought, what can I do? My German wasn't good enough to be a bilingual secretary. And so I thought, well, what do I know about? What do I want to do? And so I just started sending reviews back to the then editor, Mary Clark.
And what happened next?
Nothing for a bit. And then suddenly she published a whole slew of reviews. And then she started commissioning me.
Oh, wow. So were you paid for the initial ones, or that was your audition in a way?
No, she paid me once she'd published. And then it just, it went from there. And then I came back to England, and I thought, nobody will be interested in me writing now. I'm going to have to go back to doing secretarial work or whatever. Mm-hmm. But Dance Europe started up that year. And I stayed there writing for her. I did some normal day jobs. I worked for Waterstones for 5 years at their head office. Fantastic.
If you can't write it, read it.
Yes, well, that was my passion, reading. And I was able to review while I had my day job as well. And it's sort of gone from there. Then I had my children, and so... I stopped doing the day job and just did more writing.
And is that your full-time gig now? You're writing?
Oh, totally full-time, yeah.
And you're a critic, which is the same as a writer, is it, I guess?
Well, I call myself a dance writer because you do interviews with people and write features and things like that. So it's not just reviews.
And podcasts.
Oh, yes, and do podcasts. It's been a journey. And Dancing Times, I went back to the Dancing Times for a little while, and then unfortunately that folded.
It did fold, and just to jump in there, the Dancing Times was the dance magazine in the UK. Not only did it look great, it was filled with interesting things. It also had sometimes jobs in there. It had reviews of what was going on. And we did lose that publication during COVID or just after COVID, maybe?
It was just after COVID.
But probably a result of COVID. And that's where people are obviously moving to new places to read about dance, see dance. I mean, a lot's happening all the time. It's very hard to keep up because you've got people that can just pull out a phone and give you a review 2 minutes after the show. And regardless of quality, sometimes that's, a marketing function that it has become sort of undeniable. How do you move in writing now? What is the space where you're finding is the place for dance writing?
Well, obviously I have to say Bachtrack now.
I thought that might be the answer as I said it, actually. And it is a great website, I do have to say. And when you come across a writer like yourself, it's fantastic how they present all the things you've written. I found myself in there a few times. Yeah, often very good. I mean, actually, having said that, here's probably the question some people wonder about. I kind of know this now from casting, actually. When you make a decision that isn't the way that someone wants it to go, especially when it's an opinion or, subjective to the person making the decision, suddenly those people don't necessarily want to have tea with you anymore, shall we say. So how do you balance being such a feature on the dance landscape against having to say, actually, what I just saw was perhaps not the best thing I've seen this year?
I think there are ways and means of being critical. And I think if you're going to criticise, it has to be constructive. I have certain rules where I would say, don't criticise something about someone when they can't do anything about it. Don't say, well, I don't like her because she's got red hair or she's got flat feet or something.
He's short.
Or, yes, he's just not tall enough to do. It's pointless.
Can't take him seriously at this point, yeah.
Because there is, with every single dancer on that stage, and this also includes the musicians in the pit and everything, they have worked their whole lives to do this. They've trained sometimes 7 days a week or, whatever, to get to that stage and to then say, oh, well, they were clearly having an off night because they were just falling off their pirouettes and that you can't do that. There has to be a way to balance it with the strength of that individual.
Although slightly scary, that clearly if you wanted to, you could. you know what to say. I think I just took that personally somehow, and I'm not even playing in the orchestra, but yeah.
I just think it's really important to balance things up. It's the same if you go and see a new production, and the choreographer has given probably 3 years worth of their lives into creating this full-length work, commission score, you can't just say it was rubbish.
Yeah.
You have to justify what. Can you tell I'm getting really into this now?
No, definitely. Well, I mean, listen, it's your passion, and I think there's, you don't have to give us, obviously, you don't have to give us away all the secrets of how it works, but I kind of have some questions that I know a lot of people ask. Like, when you review, do you review your experience? Do you review what you think the experience around you is? Do you imagine yourself as an anonymous person, or do you review it from, the perspective of a dance person? Like, who are you when you review?
Gosh, it's quite hard to forget that you've once been up there on stage. I would put myself slightly in their shoes. I think it's inevitable. I feel a great deal of compassion for what they're going through. I don't think it's helpful to... sometimes I've seen people do things that I have danced many times, and I know what it feels like to be waiting in the wings, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's necessarily helpful to point out that they're nervous or whatever. I think a certain amount of trepidation is very useful on stage because it gives you an edge. I think when I'm sitting there, you are aware of the people around you, so I would question myself if everyone else is going absolutely bananas at the end, and if I'm sitting there thinking, why are they going that mad? I need to sit down and think, what have I just seen. You need to be incredibly objective and aware that you are reviewing that particular performance. You're not reviewing what that dancer did last week, which was absolutely, fantastic. You're looking at it afresh, and you have to you have to be really honest with yourself. But
so it's you don't, like, for instance, TripAdvisor, people might say, I think a family would, or as a family I enjoy this. You kind of say, this is what Deborah thinks, this is how Deborah feels about this.
It is what you feel, but you can also include in that this production would be ideal for someone who's never been to the ballet before and maybe is interested in giving it a go. I mean, you can say those things. I
mean, with Ballet Nights, we from day one, we worked with our PR, Judy Lipsey, and I met Judy a long time ago, and it really instilled in me the need to make sure that the press are included from the beginning, that they know it's happening, and even if they can't come. And I know with Ballet Nights, there was initially a kind of, is this another gala? And then we did another one and another one and another one. And the new mechanism we're kind of trying to introduce is kind of a series. And outside of just the press, it's great to see the same gang of people come to the show. Even now we've gone to the bigger show at Cadogan Hall. After the show at the meet and greet, I often see those people that were there at the beginning. And it must be... Well, tell me, is it exciting? Is it not exciting to kind of see that this thing that sounded like another small project kind of is still there?
It is exciting. I think it's fantastic because it's growing. It isn't just the same old that you started with. It seems to be moving in lots of different directions. More people are becoming involved. And so far, what I've seen of it, it's kind of maintenance of high standards. So it's not going to, you can't drop from that. There's only one way it can go, which is up.
No pressure. Well, Deborah, I mean, it's been unbelievable to hear about what I was really interested in, which is what you did as a dancer. It's been even more fantastic to dig into some tough questions there about press and reviewing and being a writer. I don't want to go any further because I think obviously we don't want to compromise the art form that is writing about dance or writing about anything. But I do have one other question, which is, if it's not dance, what is it?
Well, it could be quite a few things. I put my children first in every situation. They are my greatest achievement. And I know I've been asked before, so, what's your greatest achievement? And people expect me to say, oh, it's when I did Queen of the Willies at whatever. And it really is not. My children are the most important thing. But I think if I was to hang up my writing rather than my shoes, I think I would be really happy working in an art gallery or reading all day long. I'd go and do lots of courses, painting courses and things like that. I would spend even more time than I do with my dog.
The first dog person. We've had a lot of cats, as our audience will know, but the first dog person. So basically,
he's the main man. He is the main man in my house.
He's the main man in your life?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What's his name?
Bruce.
Bruce? Okay.
He's my Brucey.
Right. Was that before or after you met Bruce Marriott?
I won't comment on that.
You won't comment or confirm the Bruce conspiracy. So that's really wonderful. So for Christmas, which may be happening before or after this podcast, we'll see, someone needs to get you a book, which I know when my grandma used to do that for me, it was a mixed reaction, and some paintbrushes.
Yeah.
Which means, Deborah, it's time to pose Darcy. So Deborah, we've posed Darcy. It turned into a collaborative creation, actually, for which I'll be taking credit as well, because you found Darcy quite difficult to work with. So as a critic, what are we seeing here? What's not working for you?
Well, this is no reflection on the real Darcy.
That is the real Darcy. I don't know what Darcy's out there that she's referring to, by the way. There's no trademarking on the name Darcy, I hope.
I think her head is not brilliantly well aligned. And
that's the bit I did, so we won't.
Well, so her arms are a little bit too far behind her head, and she looks a bit turned in on the back foot.
She has turned out. It's too late. Once you've done it, you've done it.
Okay. But it's not bad, and I think the feeling is good. And
how many stars?
3.
3 stars. Okay, well, that's not too bad. Deborah, it's been really amazing to have you on. I hope we have another go at this at some point. I'd like to say a big thank you to our audience at home and our listeners. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to our studio audience. This has been the Ballet Nights Podcast, and I'll see you at the next one.